بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, we just prayed Maghrib, alhamdulillah, here, at least in California. And technically speaking, after Maghrib now is the 27th night of Rajab. Rajab is the 7th month in the Islamic lunar calendar. And this month was regarded as one of the sacred months in which battles were prohibited in the days of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even in the days of Jahiliyyah, even in the days of ignorance, obviously before Islam, there were 4 months that they were revered months, and they would not wage war against each other in these 4 months. And one of these months is the month of Rajab. It is also a month which leads to month of Ramadan, Rajab, and then Sha'ban and the month of Ramadan. And since Ramadan follows after it, after the intervening month of Sha'ban, whenever Rasulullah ﷺ would see the moon of the month of Rajab, Rasulullah ﷺ used to make dua, and he would say, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajab wa Sha'ban wa ballaghna Ramadan. Oh Allah, make the months of Rajab and Sha'ban blessed for us, and let us reach the month of Ramadan. And this is, we find in some ahadith that Rasulullah ﷺ mentioned, he would make this dua. A lot of people ask this question, I had a few people ask me earlier today that, okay, are we expected to fast tomorrow? Is there any specific type of worship for tonight, since tonight is the 27th month of Rajab? The reality is that there's no specific way of worship that has been prescribed by the Sharia in this month. However, some people have invented some special rituals or practices in this month of Rajab, and the reality is that these things are not supported by reliable resources, by reliable ahadith, or if they are, then like fasting and praying or doing any kind of act of ibadah in this night, they are based upon unauthentic traditions, hadith. And inshallah ta'ala, in one of my objectives tonight with this lecture, inshallah ta'ala, is that I will clarify those things, inshallah. So when it comes to the incident of Isra and Mi'raj, or to celebrate the night of Mi'raj, as also it's called Laylatul Mi'raj, it is generally believed that the great event of Mi'raj means the ascension of the Holy Prophet ﷺ to the heavens, took place in the night of 27th of Rajab. So a lot of people, a lot of ulama believe, like basically it's commonly understood that this incident of Isra and Mi'raj took place in the night of the 27th night of Rajab. Therefore, because of this, some people celebrate the night as Laylatul Mi'raj. It's important to note that the event of Mi'raj was one of the most remarkable episodes in the life of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are not discounting that. We are not undermining that whatsoever. He was called by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He traveled from Mecca to Baytul Maqdis, and from there he ascended the heavens through the miraculous power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this aspect by mentioning Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa alladhi barakna hawlahu limadha linuriyahu min ayatina. So we're not discounting the fact that this night is like this night was a we're not discounting the fact that this night was not an auspicious night. This is the night where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in such a manner that no one has been honored in that manner, and neither will anyone be honored uh, until the day of judgment in that manner. Another thing to clarify is that some people believe that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw a dream and he ascended the heavens. Like before ascension, he traveled from Mecca to Bayt al-Maqdis in a dream, and he, and then like this whole Isra and Mi'raj took place while he was asleep. That is not the case. Our aqidah, our belief is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was indeed blessed with this. Physically, he was taken from Mecca to Bayt al-Maqdis, and then from Bayt al-Maqdis he was taken to the heavens. This unique honor given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was to him alone, and it was the climax of the spiritual progress, which is not attained by anybody except Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no doubt the night in which he was blessed with this honor was one of the greatest nights in the history of humanity, right? There's no doubt about that. Islam has its own principles with regard to the historic and religious events. Its approach about observing festivals and celebrating days and nights is totally different from the approach of other religions. The Holy Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not prescribe any festival or any celebration to take place the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ did not prescribe any festival or any celebration to commemorate an event from the past. However, remarkable it might have been. Instead, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed 2 annual celebrations only. One is Eid al-Fitr and the other is Eid al-Adha. These are the 2 Eids that we find in the Sunnah, and it's as simple as that. Both of these Eids have been fixed at a day on which we as Muslims celebrate these days through extra ibadah every single year. We know obviously that Eid al-Fitr has been prescribed after the fasts of Ramadan. Technically, Eid al-Fitr takes place a day after the month of Ramadan, and Eid al-Adha has been fixed when the Muslims perform the Hajj annually. So Eid al-Adha is based upon the Hajj, which takes place every year. None of these 2 Eids is designed to commemorate a particular event of the past which has happened in these dates. This approach is proving of the fact that the real occasion for a happy celebration is the day in which the celebrators themselves have accomplished remarkable work through their own active effort. We find in various ahadith that a person that Eid al-Fitr is a day of celebration for a believer, and The reason being is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm giving you the crux, the gist of various narrations where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this person fasted for me and I am going to give reward myself for fasting. And by us giving sadaqatul fitr, we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives our shortcomings while we were fasting. And the day of Eid is celebration because we have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is accepting our ibadah and is uh, giving us tremendous reward on that day. The concept of celebrating accomplishments of our predecessors, that is not part of Islam. Instead, their accomplishments must be remembered every day in the practical life by observing their teachings and following the great examples they have set for us. There are a few points that I do want to mention regarding in regards to Laylatul Meraj. Number one, and all of these things I'm going to mention is the intent is to educate ourselves about these things, because there are a lot of things that are going around in the community and people are believing these things and they believe that this is part of Islam, whereas it's not. So the first point to make is that we cannot say with absolute certainty in which night the great event of Mi'raj took place. There are some hadiths that mention that this event did take place on the 27th night of Rajab, but there are other hadiths that suggest otherwise. Famous biographers of the Prophet ﷺ have referred to 5 different views in this respect, right? So according to historians, according to biographers of Rasulullah ﷺ, there are 5 different views about them, like basically according to them 5 different possibilities of this taking place. Rabi al-Awwal, Rabi al-Thani, Rajab, Ramadan, and Shawwal. Rabi al-Awwal, Rabi al-Thani, Rajab, Ramadan, and Shawwal. So there are opinions that exist of great scholars that they believe, that some scholars believe this incident took place in Rabi al-Awwal. Some believe it took place in Rabi al-Thani. Some believe it was in Rajab, and for some reason it's commonly known that this took place in Rajab. And with all due respect, just because it's famous that this took place in Rajab does not necessarily mean that it did in fact take place in Rajab. Some scholars believe this took place in Ramadan. Some scholars believe this took place in Shawwal. There are, believe it or not, there are also some scholars that have added a 6th opinion. Some scholars believe, which is not common, but some scholars believe that this incident took place in the month of Dhul Hijjah, believe it or not. There's one great scholar. He wrote a detailed book on the merits and the different statuses of the Islamic calendar. When he was mentioning Laylatul Mi'raj, like this evening or this night of Ascension, he mentioned in that book that most of the scholars are of the opinion that this event took place in the month of Ramadan or in Rabi'ul Awwal. So that's the first point. Brief recap. We cannot say with certainty that this incident did take place in the month of Rajab. That's number one. Number two, it is also not known in which year the event of Mi'raj took place. Okay, so you have difference of opinion in which month it took place. You have difference of opinion in which year this took place. So the books of history suggest, again, historians, they suggest a wide range between the 5th year and the 12th year after the Holy Prophet ﷺ, becoming a prophet. So there is difference of opinion in regards to which year this took place. And if you were to understand, if you try to understand, there are differing opinions between like the 5th year and the 12th year. So there's like a 7-year gap that scholars are of the opinion that this is when this incident took place. Right. Now, if it's assumed that the event of Mi'raj took place in the 5th year of 5 years after him becoming a prophet, it will mean that the Holy Prophet ﷺ remained in this world for 18 years after this event. Okay, so we're doing some historical analysis here. If we assume that the event of Mi'raj took place in the 5th year of his prophethood, and this is one extreme of some opinions, right? As early as the 5th year of Nabuwah, of his prophethood, it will mean that the Holy Prophet ﷺ remained in this world for 18 years after this event. Even if it is, even if we assume that Mi'raj took place in the 12th year of him becoming a prophet, his remaining lifetime after this event would be 11 years. So you have a 7-year difference. So according to the opinion of this incident taking place 5 years after Nabuwah, then Rasulullah ﷺ remained in this world 18 years after this incident. And if you take the other extreme, like you take the 12th year, then you would say that Rasulullah ﷺ stayed in this, his remaining lifetime after this event would be 11 years. So throughout this long period, which may range between 11 years and 18 years, the Holy Prophet ﷺ never celebrated. Okay, so even with difference of opinions, you can hand it out. So even with difference of opinions, which ranges between 11 to 18 years, right, of him remaining in this world after this incident, the Holy Prophet ﷺ never celebrated the event of Mi'raj. So it's not proven that Rasulullah ﷺ himself celebrated the event of Isra and or of Mi'raj, nor did he give any instruction about it. So according to one opinion, in which year this took place was would imply that Rasulullah ﷺ remained for 11 years in this world after that incident. And then according to another opinion, it would be 18 years. So between 11 to 18 years, it's not proven that Rasulullah ﷺ, A, celebrated this night himself, B, neither did he encourage the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu anhum ajma'in that, hey everybody, this is the night that this incident took place, and therefore you should also celebrate that this evening. No one can prove that the Holy Prophet ﷺ ever performed some specific modes of worship in a night, calling it the Laylatul Mi'raj, or advised his Sahaba to do the same. And this is a bold statement that I'm making, that no one could prove the fact that Rasulullah ﷺ carried out any kind of special act of worship during this evening. Neither is proven that he advised the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in to do the same. So that's the second point. The first point regarding this incident is that we cannot say for certain that which month this took place. Now, the second point was which year this took place. Okay, so there's a difference of opinion in which month this took place. Now there's this, the second point I just made is that there's a difference of opinion of of which year this took place. Point number three. After the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no one from his Sahaba, his companions, is reported to celebrate this night as a night of special ibadah or to carry out any kind of special ibadah. They were, and there's no doubt that this deen that we have, this deen that you and I have, we got it through the Sahaba. Understand? They devoted themselves to preserve the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So much so that every moment of his life has been preserved. Right? If you open the books of Shama'il, right? Shama'il Tirmidhi, the characteristics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he used to walk, how he used to look like, how he used to address people, how he used to wear clothing, his physical features, everything inside his home, outside his home was recorded by the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu anhu ajma'in. And doesn't it seem strange that all the Sahaba would miss out on such a great detail of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, carrying out any kind of ibadah during that night, and it would go unnoticed? Isn't that strange, right? So the Sahaba Kiram did not celebrate this night in a particular the Sahaba Kiram did not celebrate this night in any particular manner. So all these points that I'm making, these 3 points that I've made so far, go a long way to prove that the celebration of the 27th night of Rajab, arguably being or according to some scholars, it not being the Laylatul Mi'raj, has no basis in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So no one could prove that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam celebrated this. You cannot call this the Sunnah, right? One brother a few hours ago asked that, am I expected to do this tonight? I simply responded immediately, it is not the Sunnah. Like the conversation, this is how it went. He sent me a message. Oh, any special acts of worship tonight? And I knew he was talking about the 27th night of Rajab. So I responded by saying, it's not the Sunnah. So he says, oh, it's the 27th night of Rajab. I'm like, yeah, I know it's the 27th night of Rajab, but it's not the Sunnah to celebrate this night at all. So there's no basis in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or in the practice of the Sahaba Kiram to do so. If it was a commendable practice, or if it was something that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did advise, then the exact date of this event would have been preserved accurately by the Ummah. There would be a consensus by the Ummah that this is when this incident took place. And his blessed companions, Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu anhum, would have definitely given specific directions for the Ummah to follow as well. So therefore, conclusively, it is not a Sunnah. Again, it is not a Sunnah to celebrate the Laylatul Mi'raj. We cannot declare any practice as a Sunnah unless it is established through authentic sources that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or his noble Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala anhu ajma'in, they recognized it as such. Otherwise, it may become a bid'ah, which the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has observed in the following words Rasulullah SAW said that whoever invents something in our religion which is not a part of it, it is to be rejected, right? So very clearly, we cannot claim that this was a sunnah of Rasulullah SAW, or this is something that Rasulullah SAW, Sahaba Ikram, his companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhu ajma'in, this is what they did. All the recognized methods of worship, ibadah, like salah, reciting the Quran, doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, etc., are open for us to do at any time, right? Especially in the hours of the night, and like to do qiyamul layl, tahajjud, etc. All of these things are commendable. And obviously on the 27th night of Rajab is not an exception. So if someone performs any recognized ibadah during this night, from this point of view, nothing can stop him from doing so. And this person will be, inshallah ta'ala, this person will receive ajr, this person will receive hasanat, inshallah, for doing qiyamul layl, etc. But it is not permissible, okay? So if you want to wake up tonight and do ibadah, mashallah. But it is not permissible to believe that performing ibadah in this night is more virtuous or carries more reward عند Allah, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this belief, to have this understanding, is not based on any authentic hadith or any verse of the Quran. Similarly, it is not a correct practice to celebrate this night collectively. Some people may have a party, with this virus situation. You're supposed to be in isolation anyways. Now it's a mandate to not to get into gatherings more than 5 people. So it is not permissible. It is not correct to come together and to have a party, etc. Invite people to make, to cook food, etc. This is not from the Sunnah. See, what the challenge with bid'ah. Okay, so let me define bid'ah. Bid'ah is innovation that a person is making in deen. Now, unfortunately, people misunderstand this concept of bid'ah, and just because something is new, then they also throw that under the bus. So we need to understand that there's 2 types of bid'ah, or ihdath is also it's known. Okay, so ihdath or bid'ah or innovation is of 2 types. Okay, one is ihdath fid deen, and one is ihdath lid deen. In simpler terms, what this means is, it's either a person is carrying out an innovation or something new in the deen, or someone is carrying out some kind of innovation for the deen. So the difference between the 2, one is in and the other is for. So ihdath lid deen, and then you have ihdath lid deen. You either have, in other terms, in other ways, in other words, you have innovation for the deen, or you have innovation in the deen. And the point to clarify is that to innovate, to have any kind of innovation, or to add something to the deen, in deen, it is absolutely haram. It is absolutely haram to do so. No one has the right to add something to the deen, right? There's no such thing as doing that. Yes, people like qualified muftis that give fatwa, they are not technically doing ihdath fid din. They're simply making qiyas upon other injunctions that is found throughout the Quran and Sunnah, and based upon that, obviously with prerequisites, with training, etc., they tell you, okay, so based on these ilal, or based upon these underlying factors, this is also haram, right? So they're not carrying out any kind of innovation in the deen. They are simply explaining, or they're simply figuring out what is halal, what is haram, mubah, etc. So there's no question about anyone uh, carrying out any kind of innovation for the deen. Like, I'm sorry, if any kind of innovation in the deen. There's no ifs and buts about it. No one could stand up and say, I will reform this, I will reform that. That door has been closed. The door of wahi, of revelation, has been discontinued. So therefore it is not going to be um, acceptable. Now when it comes to innovation for the deen, and this is what a lot of people, with all due respect, they lack, basically they misunderstand things, or lack of knowledge, or what have you. um, they also begin to believe that innovation for the deen is also haram, which is not the case. So for example, if innovation for the deen, and what I mean by that is, if innovation, or to take new steps for the deen, for example, this lecture right now, which is being streamed live on Zoom and on YouTube, um, if ihdath lid deen, or innovation for the deen, was haram, then technically I would not be allowed to um, deliver this lecture in this manner, like online, right? It will not be permissible. So the fine line between innovation for deen and in deen is that when it comes to promote the deen, when it comes to teaching people, or to get the word out, or to give da'wah, etc., it's not only is it fine, it's commendable, right? For us to use resources within the hudud of Islam, within the permissibility of the Quran and Sunnah, for us to use those means, for us to promote the deen, for us to get the word out, to allow people to educate themselves, etc. So that was something which is worth mentioning. I've come across a lot of situations where people fail to draw that fine line, and because of that, they fall into some gray areas, which jeopardizes their aqidah as well. So the fourth point that I would make is that some people suggest um, that there are some special modes of worship to be performed in this night, um, like to do salat al-tasbih, or to carry out a specific type of recitation during the night. Since there's no special method of ibadah which is prescribed in the Quran and the Sunnah, these suggestions are like these kind of ideas or suggestions um, are baseless and should be avoided. So we were talking about what people do during the night, but then some people believe that we should fast on the 27th day of Rajab. So in our scenario, in this instance, for us to fast tomorrow, which is Sunday here in California, right, is also part of Islam. It's part of the Sunnah, or as if this is something that we're supposed to do. Although there are some ahadith attributing special merits to the fast of the day, but it's worth mentioning is that those ahadith are very weak, and they are not you may say they're not, like we cannot, they're not sufficient to establish such a ruling that it is commendable to fast on the 27th day of Rajab. So far what we've covered in this past few minutes is that there's no such thing as worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to carry out any kind of ibadah, which is basically worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tonight, the 27th night of Rajab. Neither is it established in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or proven to us through the actions of the Sahaba Kiram radiallahu anhum that they would fast on this day. So it should be, you should keep in mind that to fast a voluntary fast, one could do so every single day, except those days which are haram for us to do so. For example, it is haram to fast on both Eids. It is also haram to fast on the 3 days of Eid al-Adha, etc. So to fast on the 27th day of Rajab is not prohibited. Obviously, the 27th day of Rajab is not listed amongst those days of it being haram. But what is prohibited, what is haram, is to believe that fasting on this day is more virtuous than fasting during other days, right? So if you are about to fast tomorrow because it's the 27th day of Rajab, you should not do so, because to have that belief is incorrect. But if you decide to fast, believing that it's a normal nafil fast and you're not doing it just because it's the 27th day of Rajab, then there's nothing wrong with that, inshallah. Some people, so these are some of the things I want to discuss as well, inshallah ta'ala, is that some people believe in sacrificing an animal in the month of Rajab, believe it or not. So in the days of ignorance, which is obviously not part of Islam, right? So in the days of Jahiliyyah, the Arabs used to slaughter an animal, like a goat, etc., in the month of Rajab, and this type of sacrifice that they would carry out of a goat in this month of Rajab would be called Rajabiyya, right? So this sacrifice, or this this sacrifice was offered in the name of different so-called gods and their partners, al-iyazu billah, right? So this was an act of the Arabs at the time of Jahiliyyah, of ignorance, that they would slaughter an animal in the name of idols, al-iyazu billah. So in the beginning of Islam, this custom or this tradition that the Arabs were accustomed to was uprooted, was no longer the case. But the Muslims modified it by offering the sacrifice of atira in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sacrifice of atira in the name of Allah instead of the idols. But finally, this tradition was also abandoned, and the Holy Prophet ﷺ prohibited the Sahaba Kiram to offer atira as well. So conclusively, Rasulullah ﷺ did stop people from doing that. So in a tradition of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, reported by Bukhari and Muslim, the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that there's no such thing as atira, right? So there's no such thing as sacrificing an animal in the month of Rajab. Umrah in the month of Rajab, some people believe that to carry out Umrah in the month of Rajab is also part of the deen, which is not. Again, see, when we talked about there's no special worship during the night, there's no special worship during the day. So obviously all of these things are not included in those things, right? So there's no fasting, there's no slaughtering an animal, there's no Umrah, there's no special ibadah during the night, none of that. What is worth mentioning, and I will conclude with this inshallah ta'ala, it's been a few, it looks like it's been some time, mashallah. Been going on, alhamdulillah, is that, see, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was honored with this ascension to the heavens. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was gifted with something which we are expected to hold on to in our lives, which is the establishment of 5 times salah. And we've heard of this incident many times, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was initially given 50 prayers, and then Musa alayhi salam told him that, hey man, hey, go back, it's not going to happen, right? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came back with 45, and then Musa alayhi salam told him that keep going. So back and forth, like there was this back and forth until Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was left with 5 salawat, 5 prayers for us during the day and the night. And Musa alayhi salam told him, go back again. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, that I am now, I'm ashamed to go back and to ask for a reduction. So instead of us delving into bid'at and those things which are not part of Islam, refresh your love for salah. And yes, we need to have love for salah. Salah is not intended to be, it's not meant to be a burden for us. This is something for us to look forward to and to establish. And my dear respected brother and sister in Islam, ask yourself this question. Have you established salah the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to establish salah? And what does establishment of salah mean? It's to fulfill the rights of salah. It means that you're checking off on all the prerequisites which are required in order for you to pray salah, right? You're praying on time. You're praying in a manner according to the sunnah, right? You're making your wudu properly. You're making sure your tahara, your cleanliness is correct. You're checking off on all of the fiqhi, the points from jurisprudence, and then spiritually, you're ready for this. You're in the zone. You're looking forward to it. And last but not least, you have 5 salah in your daily life, regardless if it's a Sunday or it's a Wednesday. It doesn't matter if you're traveling or you're at work. What is meant by establishing 5 times salah is no matter what, you do not miss 5 times salah. That is what, and that is something that it's fard. It is something that it's part of what makes you and I a Muslim, is to establish salah. And if I have not established salah in my life until now, then honestly, legitimately ask yourself this question. If you haven't done so until today, why haven't you done so until now? Why not? What's our excuse? Why are we continuously waiting, till tomorrow that, okay, I'm going to start praying 5 times, I've come across certain situations where people say, oh, I will establish 5 times prayer when I retire or when I get old. This is like, what kind of mentality is that? That, oh, you're gonna become a slave of Allah only when you only when you get old, right? And like that's not Islam, right? I grew up remembering people that would say, oh, I'm not gonna go for Hajj until I get old. Like they would have the money, they would have the resources, but they would purposefully delay Hajj until they would reach 65 and they would retire, and with that retirement money. That's not Islam. Islam tells us do things as soon as you're able to do them. So, respected brother and sister in Islam, you need to ask yourself a very very serious and straightforward question. And I share this with students all the time, is that this basic concept of me proving through my actions that I'm a Muslim, right? So I could claim I'm a Muslim, but if I have not established Salah in my life, through my actions, how am I proving that I'm a Muslim, right? Being a Muslim is not only having good character and being nice to people and being understanding and being to have empathy and to have feelings for people. That's Islam is not limited to that. Islam requires action. Islam requires that we establish salah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran that salah is going to stop you from all types of evil, right? So the message for tonight is there's no such thing as any kind of special worship for the month of Rajab. There's no special worship for this night. There's no such thing as a sunnah fast, or there's no such thing as it's good to fast on the day of the 27th of Rajab. It's haram to believe that it's part of the deen, and that's innovating, that's adding things to the deen which is not part of the deen. We are expected to practice upon the deen in the purest form, and then on top of that, for us to ensure that we are doing our best and allowing this deen to reach the next generation in the purest of form as well. What's going to happen? What are the consequences? Okay, what are the consequences if you're worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tonight because of of it being 27th of Rajab, and what are the consequences of you having a party tomorrow at your house for iftar? What are the consequences? Your kids are going to grow up thinking that this is something which is part of Islam, and you know now that it is not. And when you do so, when you're instilling such things in your child's in their memories, then you are doing a great disservice to them. And the second message that I have for everyone, including myself, is that revisit your love for salah. We are expected to look forward to salah, and we are supposed to establish salah in our lives. The first question we're going to be asked on the day of judgment is about our salah. If we pass with our salah, then inshallah everything else will be okay. But if I fall short regarding my salah on the day of judgment, then I'm in deep trouble. And some of you may not be comfortable by me saying this, but part of being a Muslim is to establish salah, right? Some people say, "Oh, I don't pray because my heart is clean." Like who are you to determine for yourself that your heart is clean? I don't pray because my heart is clean. I don't pray because there's no such thing as because ifs and buts and whatever. And what's crazy is that some people believe, and I just found this out recently, is that some people believe that they don't have to fast in the month of Ramadan because they believe in so and so, as they say, Baba, or so and so guy that exists or existed. Alayazu billah, right? Some people believe that, I'm off the hook regarding my prayers because I believe, or I'm a part of this group. What the Jahannam is that? What the Jahannam is that? What kind of, what is that? Just because you associate yourself with a group, that means that you're off the hook on these things? Like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam fasted, man. So who in the Jahannam you think you are that you're above Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to fast? The Sahaba Kiram fasted, the Tabi'in fasted, Tabi'in fasted, our pious predecessors fasted. So there's no such thing as this cultish bunch of baloney that I'm not, I've come across people like that, like subhanallah, that, oh no, we believe we're part of this Baba crew, and some old guy that existed or he still exists or whatever, and all kinds of shirk is happening. Alayazu billah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq and ability to become and remain on a straight path, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran. for us to recite in Salah. Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Oh Allah, guide us on the straight path. Oh Allah, we beg you that you guide us on the straight path. You guide us on the straight path. Never allow us to fall for these little scapegoats that oh, I don't gotta fast because that logically doesn't even make sense. Subhanallah bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. So one question is asked is that is Isra and Mi'raj the same thing? So Isra and Mi'raj, they took place in the same evening. Isra is the first part of the journey, which took place from Mecca to Bayt al-Maqdis. That's Isra. And then Mi'raj is from Bayt al-Maqdis to the heavens, as far as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to go. That is the safest thing to say, right? So Isra is the trip or the travel that took place between Mecca and Bayt al-Maqdis, and Mi'raj is the ascension. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.